Charles Darwin attended divinity school at Cambridge because his sensitive nature prevented him from studying medicine. There, he attended biology and geology lectures and met Reverend John Henslow, his mentor. Henslow recommended him to serve without pay as the naturalist on the HMS Beagle for a 2-year trip that ended up becoming 5 years long. This trip would go around the southern hemisphere, where he would encounter forms of life different from those in his native England. Darwin accepted this job. During his travels, he began to contemplate the mystery of mysteries, the origin of new species. Darwin took with him Charles Lyell's Principles of Geology, which supported a theory of geological change proposed by James Hutton. In Hutton's theory, he explains that the Earth was subject to slow but continuous cycles of rock formation through erosion and uplift. Changes in weather causes this erosion. Then, the dirt and rock debris is washed into rivers and eventually into oceans. These loose sediments are deposited in thick layers, which eventually become sedimentary rocks that hold fossils. These rocks then are uplifted from below sea level to form islands. Lyell, on the other hand, proposed the theory of uniformitarianism, which stated that these slow changes that Hutton speaks of occurred at a uniform rate. Although Darwin didn't agree with this idea of uniform change, he was certain, like Lyell, that the Earth's massive geological changes are the result of extremely slow processes, and therefore the Earth must be very old. While exploring Argentina on his trip, Darwin saw raised beaches for great distances along the coast. Marine shells were left in the Andes, indicating that an earthquake caused the land to rise several feet above sea level, supporting Lyell's theory. On the east coast of South America, Darwin found the fossil remains of 2 extinct animals, the glyptodon, an armadillo-like animal the size of a small car, and a giant ground sloth, the smallest of which stood nearly 3 meters tall. These fossil remains indicated to Darwin that if the Earth really was very old, modification could occur over time and living forms could be descended from extinct forms known only in the fossil record. Biogeography is the study of the range and geographic distribution of life forms on Earth. Darwin studied the Patagonian hare in the grasslands of South America, which resembled rabbits but had the face of a guinea pig. He considered that these similarities were because the hare was adapted to the same type of environment as the rabbit, and the hare may share common descent with the guinea pigs. He also noticed that the greater ray, an ostrich-like bird, was found in the north of South America, while the lesser ray lived further south. From this, he reasoned that related species could be modified according to environmental differences. Darwin explored the Galapagos Islands, each of which he noticed had its own type of tortoise. Long-necked tortoises were found only in dry areas where food was scarce and where they needed their long necks to reach tall cacti. Short-necked tortoises inhabited moist regions with abundant ground foliage. Also, the finches of these islands were similar to mainland finches but had different types of beaks which varied based on environment and food source. For example, ground-dwelling finches had beaks large enough to eat the seeds that were available to them. Back in England, Darwin concluded that adaptations develop over time, and he proposed the process of natural selection. This concept suggests 4 steps to adaptation. First of all, members of a population have inheritable variations. Variations within a population of a species occur for a multitude of traits, many of which are inheritable. Also, a population produces more offspring in each generation than the environment can support. In any given environment, there is a limited amount of food, water, physical space, and other resources for which individuals must compete. A socioeconomist named Thomas Malthus proposed that death and famine were inevitable because the human population tends to increase faster than the supply of food. Darwin tested this idea by calculating the reproductive potential of elephants. He found that a single female will probably bear no fewer than 6 young in her lifespan, and if all these young survive and continue to reproduce at the same rate, the descendants of a single pair of elephants will number about 19 million. No environment could support a population of this size. Some individuals have favorable traits that enable them to better compete for limited resources. These, quote, fitter individuals acquire more resources than individuals with less favorable traits and are able to have more offspring, a capability that Darwin calls differential reproductive success. What determines fitness varies for different populations. For example, western diamondback rattlesnakes living on lava flows are most fit if they are black in color because they match their background, enabling them to better capture prey and avoid being captured. The same applies to rattlesnakes of light coloring living on desert soil. Artificial selection is the process by which a breeder chooses which traits to perpetuate by choosing which animals and plants will reproduce. For example, prehistoric humans selected particular individual wolves with desirable traits for breeding, which over time created the many varieties of dogs we now have. Another result of artificial selection is how Chinese cabbage, Brussels sprouts, and kohlrabi all derive from the species Brassica oleracea. Natural selection can result in a population adapted to the local environment. An increasing proportion of individuals in each succeeding generation will have favorable characteristics suited to surviving and reproducing in that environment. An adaptation is a trait that helps organisms be more suited to their environment. Adaptations are especially recognizable when unrelated organisms living in a particular environment display similar characteristics. Due to differential reproduction, adaptive traits increase in each succeeding generation. When Darwin published his data supporting evolution by natural selection in his book On the Origin of Species, he challenged the idea that species were fixed and did not change. His hypothesis of evolution by natural selection explained how nature shapes variation in population. However, Darwin could not answer the question of how diversity arises in the first place. It was Gregor Mendel's work in 1900 that provided explanation of how new variation in populations could arise and be sustained. Over the last 150 years, there has been so much scientific support for Darwin's ideas that his hypothesis is now accepted as the theory of evolution by natural selection.